Academic English Tutorials, Academic Writing, Argumentative Essay, Capital Punishment. Overview of argumentative essays. In academic English, much of the essay writing you do requires some sort of argument. You will need to persuade a teacher or examiner that your ideas are well thought out and relevant. Furthermore, as with all essays, the ideas need to be well organized and supported by information or data, and perhaps by examples. Academic essay writing is not a matter of showing that you have read books on the topic by simply copying down the words of important writers. Essay writing, especially argumentative or persuasive type, requires you to think critically about the subject and to express your views and ideas accordingly. The example essay, "The United States and the Death Penalty," is not a long essay, about 750 words, but it does use slightly difficult expressions and terms. You may not be expected to use some of the language used in the essay as a second language learner. However, many of the words and expressions used to link ideas and show the structure of the essay will be very useful for you. Overview of the essay structure in paragraphs. The introduction introduces the topic of the essay and shows what the writer will argue in the essay. Body paragraphs are organized into topics that provide the support for the writer's argument. The transition paragraph shows that the essay is moving from one area to another. The conclusion sums up and concludes the arguments of the writer.
The introduction usually does 5 things. It introduces the topic. It says why the topic is important or relevant. It shows that there is disagreement about the topic. It shows how the essay is organized. It presents the writer's main argument or thesis statement. The first sentence demonstrates why the topic of capital punishment is important. The second sentence shows that there is support for the death penalty and outlines the main arguments in favour of it: retribution and deterrence. This sentence shows how the essay will be organised and introduces new aspects to the topic: the possibility of innocence and the role of arbitrariness and discrimination. The writer uses expressions like "I will begin by" and "followed by" to show the organisation of ideas. The final part of the introduction usually provides a thesis statement or arguments pursued by the writer. The writer uses the words "in the course of this essay I will demonstrate" to show what his argument is. The body paragraphs in an argumentative essay are usually organised into topics, contain a topic sentence or an indication of what the paragraph is about, are the parts of an essay where arguments are presented, provide evidence to support a line of argument. The first sentence in the paragraph does 2 things. It introduces the topic of the paragraph, deterrence, and at the same time presents an opposing view to that of the writer on capital punishment. The second sentence provides the main argument used by those who oppose the views of the writer on this particular topic. The writer introduces the opposing point of view with the words "it could be claimed." Other expressions that could be used include it has been argued that, it has been asserted that, it is contended that. The first part of the segment makes it clear that the writer does not agree with the views expressed above. The rest of the segment provides evidence or factual support for opposing capital punishment on the grounds of deterrence. Note how the author introduces his argument with, however, the facts do not support this claim. Furthermore could also be replaced by the terms in addition or moreover to transition from one supporting argument to another. The writer uses indeed to add strength to the final statement. See the overview for a body paragraph in paragraph 2. Once again, the first part of the paragraph begins with the opposing argument. The first sentence also contains the topic of the paragraph, retribution. The direct quote is not very long, so is included in the main part of the paragraph. The quote by Smith is referenced by using the Harvard system. For example, 1992, page 92. The writer shows that he is moving to another opposing argument with the expression, a second major argument. The segment presents the response of the writer to the opinions shown above. But is used here instead of however to show a contrasting point of view. The writer uses the words take the example of to present factual evidence to support his argument. This part of the paragraph contains a long quote. The font is usually smaller or different to the main part of the paragraph. There is usually a line spacing between the quote and the rest of the paragraph. The long quote is usually indented. This segment continues the paragraph and provides more support for the argument. Furthermore, here is used to show yet another supporting opinion on the same point, rather than change to a new line of argument. The transition paragraph does some or all of the following. It shows that one part of the essay is complete. It may summarize points already made. It introduces a new part of the essay and the topics to be discussed. It ties together one part of an essay with a later part. The first sentence in this transition paragraph summarizes the focus of the first two body paragraphs and notes that they directly address the arguments of the opposing point of view. The second sentence shows that the writer is now going to look at aspects of the capital punishment debate that do not directly respond to the opposing side of the debate, but rather provide new supporting arguments for his case. The author uses the expression "I will now turn to" show a change of direction in the essay. See the overview for a body paragraph in paragraph 2. The author introduces the topic of the paragraph in the first sentence, this time without reference to the opposing argument. This part of the paragraph provides the support for the writer's opening assertion. State execution does not take into account the possibility of innocence. The writer uses indeed to introduce supporting evidence that emphasizes or reinforces the previous statement, in fact, is also possible in place of indeed. See the overview for a body paragraph in paragraph 2. Once again, the author introduces the topic of the paragraph in the first sentence without reference to the opposing argument. This time, two related aspects of the overall argument, that the justice system is arbitrary and discriminatory, are combined under the argument of unfairness. The expression, the other major argument, is used by the author to show that he has moved on to a new area of discussion. This part of the paragraph provides a support for the author's argument of unfairness. The first part looks at the arbitrariness of the system, and the second looks at the discriminatory practices. The writer uses firstly and secondly to indicate the areas under discussion. In fact, is used to reinforce an argument with statistical information. Clearly then is used at the end of the paragraph to restate and emphasize the main arguments of the paragraph. The conclusion usually does three main things. It restates a thesis statement, although perhaps in slightly different words. It ties together the main points of the argument, and it stresses the benefits or consequences of accepting or not accepting the premise of the argument. In the first sentence, the writer restates the thesis of the essay, although in slightly different words. The second long sentence summarizes the main points of the writer's arguments. In this example, the paragraph begins with "in conclusion" to show that this is the final paragraph. Other possible expressions include "to summarize," "in summary," "to sum up," "to conclude." Moreover, in line 5 could be replaced with "furthermore." The final sentence in this argumentative essay provides a warning of the consequences of not supporting the premise of what the writer has argued, which is that the United States loses a lot of respect because of its use of capital punishment. Here the final statement is a negative one. However, it could be a positive by showing the benefits of supporting the views of the writer. For example, the USA will gain an even greater amount of respect in the world as a moral leader if it abolishes the death penalty. References appear at the end of the essay, are arranged in alphabetical order by author or, if no author, available by publication. The date of the publication appears in brackets next to the author's name. This essay uses the Harvard system, but other reference systems can be used.